He didn't have enough cash for a full tank, but he gave her the one thing no money could buy: kindness. She was grieving, alone, and ready to disappear, until a stranger sat beside her with nothing but a warm voice and a creased photo of his son. By morning, her grief had a purpose, and his life, it would never be the same. If you've ever believed that one small act of compassion could ripple into something life-changing, you're exactly where you need to be. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The fluorescent lights of the Chevron station buzzed overhead as Michael's weathered hands trembled slightly, counting the same crumpled bills for the third time. $11.43. The harsh reality of his situation hit him like a physical blow. "Please work," he whispered to himself, sliding his debit card into the pump. The screen flashed green, and he let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. But then he heard it, soft, muffled sobs cutting through the night air like a knife through silence. Near the air pump station, a woman sat hunched over, her shoulders shaking with quiet desperation. Her silver Mercedes gleamed under the station lights, a stark contrast to the raw pain etched across her face.
Michael paused, his hand still on the gas pump handle. Around him, other customers hurried past, focused on their own late-night missions, seemingly oblivious to the woman's distress. But something deep in Michael's chest tightened, a recognition that ran soul-deep. He'd been there himself, those nights when the weight of everything threatened to crush him completely. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said softly, his work boots scuffing against the concrete as he approached. "Are you all right?" The woman's head snapped up, startled. Her eyes were red-rimmed, mascara creating dark trails down her cheeks. She appeared to be in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair that had once been perfectly styled but now hung loose around her face. Everything about her spoke of wealth and status, yet in this moment she looked utterly shattered. "I'm sorry," she whispered, dabbing frantically at her eyes with a tissue. I don't know where else to go." Without thinking, Michael found himself settling down on the curb beside her, his own bone-deep exhaustion momentarily forgotten. The concrete was cold against his jeans, but something about this woman's pain called to every protective instinct he possessed. "Sometimes we all need a moment," he said simply, his voice gentle despite the weariness that clung to every word. "I'm Michael. Grace Wellington."
They sat in companionable silence, two strangers bound by the universal language of struggle. The night air carried the scent of gasoline and distant rain, while cars drifted past like ships in the darkness. Finally, Grace began to speak, her words tumbling out like water through a broken dam. "The funeral was today," she said, her voice hollow and distant. "All those people offering their condolences, telling me they understood my pain. But they don't. Nobody does." Her hands clenched into fists. "Nathan was my whole world. My husband passed 5 years ago, and Nathan was all I had left." Michael felt his own eyes well up, though he didn't fully understand why. "I'm so sorry for your loss. What happened?" Grace's breathing became shaky, and for a moment Michael thought she wouldn't continue. Then the words poured out, a torrent of grief that had been building for days. "My son Nathan was a brilliant architect, 28 years old, with his whole life ahead of him. He was working late in his downtown office when—" She paused, struggling with the memory. "There was a structural failure in the aging building. Part of it collapsed and Nathan was trapped inside." Michael's heart clenched as Grace continued, painting a picture of 3 agonizing days in hospital waiting rooms, praying for miracles that never came. He wanted to design buildings that would stand for centuries, buildings that would never fall down, never hurt anyone. The irony is devastating.
In that moment, something shifted inside Michael. He pulled out his worn leather wallet and carefully extracted a creased photograph. A young boy with gap-toothed grin and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. "This is Tyler. He's 8. Well, almost 9. He wants to be an engineer when he grows up. Says he's going to build bridges that will never fall down." Grace took the photo with trembling hands, studying the young face that smiled back at her. "She looks like she has his father's eyes," she said softly. "Where's his mother?" Michael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The old wound, never quite healed, threatened to open again. "She left 2 years ago. Said being a parent was too hard. Walked out one morning while I was at work and Tyler was at school. Haven't heard from her since. So it's just the two of you? Michael nodded, taking the photo back and carefully placing it in his wallet. As he did, Grace caught a glimpse of his hands, calloused, scarred, telling the story of hard physical labor and endless sacrifice. You look tired, Grace observed, her own pain momentarily eclipsed by concern for this stranger who had stopped to comfort her. Michael let out a short laugh that held no humor. 2 jobs will do that to you. Construction during the day, stocking shelves at the grocery store at night. Tyler stays with Mrs. Patterson next door when I can't be home. She's good to him, but he trailed off, staring at the ground. It's not the same as having his dad around. 2 jobs? Grace's eyebrows rose. That must be incredibly difficult.
We get by, Michael said with quiet dignity, though the exhaustion in his voice told a different story. Tyler's a good kid, smart as a whip. He's always taking apart old radios and watches I find at garage sales, trying to figure out how they work. His teacher says he's got real potential. Michael paused, then added more quietly, I just wish I could give him more. Better clothes, a bigger place, maybe some of those science kits he's always staring at in the store windows. Sometimes I catch him doing his homework by candlelight because I couldn't pay the electric bill on time. Grace felt something crack inside her chest. Here was this man, clearly struggling with every aspect of survival, yet he had stopped his own evening to comfort a complete stranger. The contrast wasn't lost on her. She, with all her wealth and resources, sat broken, while this man, who had so little, still had enough compassion to share. What's Tyler's favorite subject in school? She asked gently. Math and science. Kid's always asking how things work. Miss Rodriguez, that's his teacher, she says he reminds her of those young inventors you read about. Always curious, always building something. Michael's face lit up slightly as he talked about his son, and Grace saw a glimpse of the man he might be if the weight of constant worry wasn't crushing down on him. Last week, he built this bridge out of popsicle sticks for a school project. Think it hold 20 pounds. 20 pounds from popsicle sticks and glue. The other kids' parents had helped them with fancy materials, but Tyler? Michael's voice filled with pride. He made magic out of nothing.
But, Grace prompted, sensing there was more to the story. Michael's expression grew somber again. The good schools, the ones with proper science programs and field trips and resources, they cost money we don't have. Tyler's brilliant, but brilliance doesn't pay for enrichment programs or advanced classes. I'm doing everything I can, working myself to the bone, but sometimes, his voice cracked slightly, sometimes I feel like I'm failing him. Grace reached into her purse and pulled out a fresh tissue, though whether it was for her tears or his, she couldn't say. You know what I see when I look at you, Michael? He shook his head, not trusting his voice. I see a man who stopped his own evening, tired as you clearly are, stressed as you obviously are about money and time and responsibilities, to comfort a stranger. In a world where most people would have walked past, you chose kindness. Her voice grew stronger, more certain. Nathan was like that. Even as a busy architect, he volunteered at the Children's Hospital every Saturday, reading to the kids in the cancer ward. He used to tell me that small acts of compassion were what made life worth living. That's what separated humans from animals, our ability to care for strangers. Michael wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. Your son sounds like he was an amazing person. He was, Grace whispered. And sitting here with you tonight, I'm reminded that his spirit isn't gone. It lives on in people like you. They talked for another hour, sharing stories that bridged the gap between their vastly different worlds. Grace told Michael about Nathan's childhood dreams, how he used to build elaborate structures out of Legos and declare that one day he'd design buildings that would stand for 1,000 years. Michael shared memories of Tyler's latest obsessions, how the boy had recently become fascinated with suspension bridges after seeing a documentary, and how he'd spent an entire weekend trying to build a model Golden Gate Bridge out of string and cardboard. He wanted to know if we could visit San Francisco so he could see the real thing, Michael said with a wistful smile. I had to explain that we couldn't afford a trip like that right now. Maybe someday. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of dreams deferred and possibilities limited by circumstance. As the night grew later and the gas station grew quieter, Grace finally stood up, smoothing down her expensive coat. The tears had stopped, replaced with something Michael couldn't quite identify, a sense of purpose, perhaps, or newfound determination. I should let you get home to Tyler. I'm sure he'll be wondering where you are. Michael checked his phone and winched. Nearly midnight. Yeah, I told him I'd be back by 10. Mrs. Patterson probably worried sick. Before you go, Grace said, reaching into her purse once more, I want you to have this. She held out an elegant business card with raised lettering. Michael took it uncertainly, reading the name, Robert Patterson, attorney at law. Ma'am, I appreciate the thought, but I'm not sure what I'd need with a lawyer. Grace smiled, and for the first time that evening it reached her eyes, really reached them, transforming her entire face. Trust me, Michael. Just call him tomorrow morning. Ask him about the Wellington Foundation Scholarship Program. Scholarship Program? Michael's brow furrowed in confusion. I think Tyler might be exactly what we're looking for, Grace said cryptically. Promise me you'll call. Something in her tone made Michael nod, though he still didn't understand. I promise. Good. Grace extended her hand, and Michael shook it, surprised by the firmness of her grip. Thank you, Michael, for everything. Tonight, you reminded me that there's still good in the world worth fighting for. They parted ways in the parking lot, Michael climbing into his old Honda Civic while Grace got into her Mercedes. As he drove home through the quiet streets, Michael found himself thinking about their conversation, about the pain in Grace's eyes and the mysterious business card now tucked safely in his wallet. He couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, though he had no idea what. The next morning dawned bright and clear, sunlight streaming through the thin curtains of their small apartment. Michael was getting ready for his construction job, pulling on worn work boots and grabbing his hard hat from the kitchen counter, when Tyler came bounding in from the living room. Dad, there's a man at the door in a really nice suit. He says he needs to talk to you about something important. Michael frowned, checking the clock. 7:30 in the morning seemed like an odd time for a salesman to come calling. A man in a suit? Tyler, are you sure he's not just trying to sell us something? He showed me an ID and everything. He says his name is Mr. Patterson, and he's a lawyer. The business card. Michael's hand flew to his back pocket, feeling for his wallet. Grace's mysterious request from the night before came flooding back.
At the door stood a distinguished man in his 60s, wearing an immaculate navy suit that probably cost more than Michael made in a month. His gray hair was perfectly styled, and he carried a leather briefcase that looked like it had never seen a day of hard use. But his smile was warm and genuine, putting Michael slightly at ease. "Mr. Michael Harrison?" he asked, extending a manicured hand. "That's me," Michael replied cautiously, shaking the offered hand and noting the firm grip. "You're Mr. Patterson, from the card?" "Indeed I am. I represent the Wellington Foundation." The lawyer's expression grew more serious. "I believe you met Mrs. Grace Wellington last evening at a gas station?" Michael nodded slowly, still processing the surreal nature of the situation. "Yes, sir. Is she all right? She seemed pretty upset." "She's doing much better this morning, actually, thanks in large part to your kindness last night." Mr. Patterson glanced past Michael into the small apartment. "Might I come in? I have some rather important matters to discuss with you." Michael looked at Tyler, who was practically bouncing on his toes with curiosity, and then at the clock on the wall. "I'm supposed to be at the construction site in 20 minutes, Mr. Patterson. My foreman doesn't like it when we're late." "I understand, and I'll be brief," the lawyer said gently. "But I think you'll want to hear what I have to say first. In fact, I believe it might change your perspective on quite a few things." They sat in Michael's small living room, Tyler perched on the edge of their second-hand couch despite his father's gentle suggestion that he go finish getting ready for school. The furniture was mismatched and worn, but clean and well-maintained. Mr. Patterson took it all in without judgment, then opened his briefcase and pulled out several official-looking documents.
"Mrs. Wellington was quite moved by your conversation last night," he began, his voice taking on the measured tone of someone accustomed to delivering life-changing news. "She spent considerable time this morning on the phone with me, telling me about Tyler's academic interests and your family's situation."
Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Look, Mr. Patterson, if this is about charity, we appreciate the thought, but we don't need—" "It's not charity," the lawyer interrupted gently but firmly. "It's investment. Mrs. Wellington believes strongly in supporting families who demonstrate both exceptional need and exceptional character. After meeting you last night, she's convinced that you and Tyler represent exactly the kind of people her foundation was created to help." He handed Michael a thick folder bound with a blue ribbon. "The Wellington Foundation is prepared to offer Tyler a full academic scholarship, not just for elementary school, but continuing through high school and college if he maintains his academic performance." Michael's hands trembled as he opened the folder. The papers inside swam before his eyes as he tried to process what he was reading. Dollar amounts that seemed impossible. Terms like full tuition, room and board, educational expenses, and enrichment programs. This can't be real," Michael whispered, his voice barely audible. "People don't just... we met her once. For an hour. She doesn't even know us." "Oh, but she does know you," Mr. Patterson said with conviction. "She knows that you're the kind of man who stops to help a stranger in distress even when you're struggling yourself. She knows that you're raising a bright, curious boy who dreams of building bridges. And she knows that sometimes the most deserving families are the ones who would never think to ask for help." Tyler had scooted closer to his father, sensing the magnitude of the moment, even if he didn't fully understand all the legal terminology. "Dad, what does this mean? Does this mean I can go to the schools with the science labs?" Michael wrapped an arm around his son, unable to speak for the emotion clogging his throat. Mr. Patterson smiled warmly at Tyler. "It means you can go to some of the finest schools in the state, young man. Schools with science labs, computer programming classes, field trips to engineering firms, summer camps for gifted students. Everything you'll need to pursue your dreams." But the lawyer wasn't finished. "However, there's more to discuss." "More?" Michael looked up from the scholarship papers, wondering what else could possibly be added to this surreal morning. "Mrs. Wellington has also made arrangements regarding your housing situation." Michael's heart began to race. "Our housing situation?" Mr. Patterson pulled out another set of documents, these ones even more official-looking than the first. "She's purchased a property in the Riverside District, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, a large backyard, and, she was quite specific about this, a workshop space for Tyler to pursue his engineering interests." The room went completely silent. Even Tyler stopped fidgeting, sensing that something monumental was happening. "A house?" Michael's voice cracked. "She bought us a house?" "The deed is in your name, free and clear. No mortgage, no strings attached. Property taxes have been prepaid for the next 5 years, and there's a maintenance fund established to handle any repairs or improvements." Michael felt like the world had tilted sideways. This couldn't be happening. People didn't just buy houses for strangers. This was the kind of thing that happened in movies, not to exhausted construction workers counting their last $11 at gas stations. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Why would she do this?" Mr. Patterson's expression grew thoughtful, almost reverent. "Mrs. Wellington shared something with me this morning that I think you should know. Last night, when you found her at that gas station, she wasn't just grieving her son's death, she was contemplating ending her own life." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. Tyler's eyes went wide, though he didn't fully grasp the implications. "She told me she had lost all hope, all faith in humanity's capacity for goodness. She was sitting in that parking lot, convinced that the world was too cruel and meaningless to continue living in." "But then," the lawyer continued, "a tired, overworked single father, a man who clearly had his own struggles, his own problems to worry about, stopped his evening to show kindness to a complete stranger. You saved her life, Mr. Harrison. In every way that matters, you saved her life." Michael buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was hearing. She looked so sad. I couldn't just walk away. And that, Mr. Patterson said quietly, is exactly why she knows she made the right choice. The lawyer began gathering up his papers, preparing to leave. There's also a trust fund that has been established for Tyler's ongoing educational and personal expenses. Nothing extravagant, but enough to ensure that you won't need to work quite so many hours. Enough so that you can be present for more of your child's childhood. He stood and walked to the door, then turned back with a gentle smile. The house will be ready for you to move in this weekend. Mrs. Wellington hopes that you and Tyler will be very happy there. As Mr. Patterson reached for the door handle, Michael found his voice again. Will we see her again, Grace? I'd like Tyler to meet her properly, and I need to thank her, though I don't know how you thank someone for something like this. The lawyer's smile widened. Mrs. Wellington is planning to be quite involved in Tyler's educational journey. The Wellington Foundation takes a very personal interest in its scholarship recipients. She's also mentioned something about wanting to hear Tyler's ideas for bridge designs. He paused at the threshold. Oh, and one more thing. She asked me to tell you that Nathan would have liked you both very much. She said you remind her of the kind of person he always believed the world needed more of. And then he was gone, leaving Michael and Tyler alone in their small apartment with life-changing documents spread across their coffee table.
They sat together in stunned silence for several minutes, father and son, processing what had just occurred. Finally, Tyler spoke up in a small, awed voice. "Dad, what made that lady want to help us so much?" Michael pulled his son closer, thinking about Grace's tear-stained face the night before, about the moment when despair had begun to transform into something resembling hope. "Sometimes, son, when people are in their darkest moments, a simple act of kindness can change everything. Last night, I just did what felt right. I had no idea it would lead to this." He gestured at the papers scattered around them. Tyler nodded solemnly, processing this with the serious consideration he gave to all of life's big questions. "Mom used to say that good things happen to good people." Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Your mom was right about that, buddy. She was absolutely right." That afternoon, Michael called his foreman to explain that he wouldn't be able to work his usual double shift that evening. For the first time in 2 years, he was going to be home to help Tyler with homework and maybe even cook a real dinner instead of heating up another can of soup. As the day wore on, neighbors began to gather outside their apartment, drawn by the mysterious presence of the lawyer and the whispered rumors that something extraordinary had happened to the Harrison family. Mrs. Patterson from next door, the same Mrs. Patterson who had been watching Tyler during Michael's evening shifts, came by with tears in her eyes and a casserole dish. "Michael," she said as setting the dish on his counter, "I've been watching that boy of yours for 2 years now, seeing how hard you work, how much you sacrifice. If anyone deserves a miracle, it's the two of you."
Word spread quickly through their small neighborhood. By evening, there was a steady stream of visitors, co-workers from the construction site, fellow parents from Tyler's school, cashiers from the grocery store where Michael worked nights. Everyone wanted to hear the story, to share in the joy of what felt like a modern-day fairy tale. But through it all, Michael found himself thinking about Grace, about the pain in her eyes, about the way she'd spoken of her son Nathan, about how one moment of human connection had somehow transformed both their lives. That evening, as Tyler worked on his homework at their small kitchen table, Michael noticed his son was quieter than usual. The excitement of the morning had given way to something more thoughtful. "What's on your mind, buddy?" Michael asked, settling into the chair across from him. Tyler looked up from his math worksheet. "Dad, when we move to the new house, will we still remember Mom?" The question caught Michael off guard. In all the excitement and disbelief of the day, he hadn't considered how Tyler might be processing such massive changes to their life. "Of course we'll remember her," Michael said gently. "Moving to a new house doesn't mean we forget the people who were part of our old life. Your mom will always be your mom, no matter where we live." Tyler nodded, seeming satisfied with this answer. "And will we remember our old apartment, even when we have a big house with a workshop?" Michael looked around their tiny living space, the place where they'd struggled and survived and learned to be a family of two. The walls that had witnessed Tyler's first lost tooth, his proud moments showing off school projects, the quiet nights when they'd fallen asleep on the couch watching movies because they couldn't afford cable. "We'll remember everything," he promised. "The good and the hard parts. They're all part of our story."
The moving day arrived faster than either of them expected. Mrs. Wellington had arranged for a professional moving service, though their belongings filled only a fraction of the large truck. As they loaded their modest possessions, Michael was struck by how little they actually owned and how much they were gaining. The new house sat on a tree-lined street in Riverside, a neighborhood Michael had driven through countless times on his way to construction jobs, but never imagined living in. It was a colonial-style home with a wraparound porch, painted in warm cream with forest green shutters. Tyler stood on the sidewalk, his mouth hanging open as he took in their new home. "Dad, is this really ours?" Michael checked the address on the papers Mr. Patterson had left, though he'd memorized it by now. "This is really ours, buddy." But it was the workshop that truly took Tyler's breath away. Located off the garage, it was equipped with a proper workbench, tool storage, and even a computer setup with engineering software loaded and ready to use. "Mrs. Wellington thought you might like to try some digital bridge design," the real estate agent explained, handing Michael a note that had been left on the workbench. Tyler ran his small hands over the smooth surface of the workbench, his eyes bright with possibilities. "Dad, I can build real things here, big things!" That first night in their new home, Michael tucked Tyler into bed in a room that was larger than their entire old apartment. His son had chosen the bedroom that overlooked the backyard, where a massive oak tree created patterns of shadow and light on the walls. "Dad," said Tyler as Michael kissed his forehead goodnight, "do you think Nathan can see us here?" Michael paused in the doorway. "What made you think about that?" "Mrs. Wellington's son, the one who wanted to build things that would never fall down. Do you think he knows his mom helped us?"
Michael sat back down on the edge of the bed, struck by his son's intuitive understanding of the deeper currents running through their story. "I think Nathan would be very happy to know that his mom found a way to turn her sadness into something beautiful," Michael said carefully. "Sometimes the best way to honor someone's memory is to help other people achieve the dreams they had." Tyler nodded sleepily. "I want to build something for him someday, a bridge that will never fall down, just like he wanted to build buildings that would never fall down." 2 weeks later, Grace Wellington came for dinner for the first time. Michael had been nervous about the meeting, wondering how to adequately thank someone who had literally transformed their lives. But Grace arrived carrying a bouquet of wildflowers and wearing a simple blue dress that made her look years younger than she had that night at the gas station. Tyler greeted her with the enthusiasm he showed all new people, immediately launching into an explanation of his latest bridge design, a suspension structure that could theoretically span the Mississippi River. "Nathan would have loved this," Grace said quietly to Michael as they watched Tyler demonstrate the weight-bearing capacity of his latest popsicle stick creation. He was always fascinated by young minds that could see possibilities where others saw limitations. Over dinner, Grace shared more stories about Nathan, his childhood obsession with Legos, his first job as a junior draftsman, the day he graduated from architecture school. Tyler listened with detailed attention, asking detailed questions about building materials and structural engineering principles. "You know," Grace said to Tyler as they finished dessert, "Nathan kept all his old engineering textbooks. They're sitting in storage, doing no one any good. Would you be interested in looking through them?" Tyler's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? He wouldn't mind?" Grace smiled, and Michael noticed how much lighter she looked than that first night. Nathan believed that knowledge should never be hoarded. He'd be thrilled to know his books were inspiring the next generation of bridge builders. As Grace prepared to leave that evening, she pulled Michael aside on the front porch. The street was quiet, illuminated by warm porch lights and the gentle glow of fireflies in the oak tree. "I need you to know something," she said, her voice serious but peaceful. "That night at the gas station, I had given up. Completely. I was sitting in my car after leaving Nathan's grave, and I had made a decision that I'm not proud of." Michael waited, sensing the importance of what she was about to share. But then this tired, kind man approached me. This father who had every reason to be focused on his own problems, his own struggles. And instead of walking past, instead of assuming someone with a Mercedes couldn't possibly need help,
You chose compassion." Her voice grew stronger. "You reminded me that Nathan's belief in human goodness wasn't naive, that there really are people in this world worth living for, worth fighting for." She reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. A young man with dark hair and intelligent eyes, wearing a hard hat and standing in front of a half-constructed building. "This was Nathan at his first job site," she said, handing the photo to Michael. "I'd like Tyler to have it, if that's all right. Nathan believed that every great structure starts with a dream and someone brave enough to pursue it." Michael accepted the photo with reverent care. "Grace, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. This house, the scholarship, the workshop, it's more than we ever dreamed possible." Grace shook her head gently. "You've already thanked me in the most important way possible. You've given me a reason to wake up each morning. Watching Tyler grow and learn, seeing his excitement about engineering and building, it's like having a piece of Nathan's spirit back in my life." She paused, looking up at the windows of the house where warm light spilled out into the night. "This isn't charity, Michael. It's healing. For all of us. This isn't just a story about a mansion or a scholarship. It's about what the world still needs most: human decency. A grieving woman, a struggling father. Two broken people who found healing in a 5-minute conversation. It didn't take money. It didn't take a miracle. Just a moment of empathy. So wherever you are right now, if you've got nothing else to give kindness. And to you watching this, I hope the next stranger you meet sees your heart. And I hope someone, someday, asks you the only question that saved everything. Are you okay? If this story touched your heart, take a moment to think about the Grace Wellingtons and Michael Harrisons in your own community. Sometimes the person who looks like they have everything together is fighting battles you can't see. Sometimes the person who seems to have nothing has everything you need to learn about resilience and hope. The next time you see someone struggling, remember that you might be their turning point. You might be the person who shows them that the world still contains kindness worth believing in. Because at the end of the day, we're all just human beings sharing this journey together. And sometimes the most revolutionary thing we can do is simply stop and care. Sometimes one conversation at a gas station can change everything. What will your moment of kindness create? Who will you choose to see and help today? The bridge is waiting to be built. Please don't just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button and join our Everbellstories family.